This week on Super Neat Show, Advent, Hope, and Pottery Barn.
5 pottery barns,
4 calling birds,
3 shiny bass strings,
2 turtle doves,
and a tailor 314C.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry everyone! Welcome to episode 15. Glad you can make it. Glad you could stop by. Come, warm yourself by the fire.
As you can see, we are decorated. With the most festivus amongst us.
We're decorated, not soldiers.
Tell me about your mug.
Little throwback retro vintage goodness here. It is a moose with a Santa sack.
Moose claws.
On Sunday afternoon, Mel and Kenzie and Luce and I walked over to Pottery Barn. This mug was cool, so I got it.
That's a good story.
Also, I got this ornament. Tell me about your mug.
This is another favorite from Target.
Like a mouse.
You know, if you're drinking coffee, you might as well drink coffee like a mouse. Just like you do everything else.
I was going to say, is there any other way?
What about your recent Google searches?
What? I looked up LED tape control. So I was talking with cousin Kevin. Shout out to Kev. Down in Tucson. We were talking about LED tape, naturally. And how we could control it via DMX. And he's got an Arduino set up where he could power because the tape has these little chips in between each bulb. And evidently you can have them run them independently. The other thing, I was looking at C10 rear end width. You want to make sure that your rear end's the right width. In your car, obviously.
After the holidays, that might be hard to confirm.
No, I'm talking about car, obviously. What are you thinking?
Oh,
man. Come on. What were your Google searches? Better not be anything to do with plants this week.
Didn't have anything to do with rear ends, that's for sure. Let's see. I actually had a couple of good ones this week based on some conversations with Dylan. Mm-hmm. One of the items we were discussing was sriracha sauce. We were trying to decide where that originated from and if it was technically Chinese or if it was Vietnamese. Yeah, well, it's definitely hipster, but that's not its origin. Dylan actually did think it was Vietnamese, but we looked it up and it is Thai.
What?
I know, right? There's no time like the present. And then the other thing that we looked up was equally important and impressive. And it was the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We were trying to decide if it was still on the air because neither of us have seen it in like 10 years. Mm-hmm. And it's still on the air.
What?
For one season, 2014 to 15. Apparently, Terry Crews actually hosted it.
What made you smile this week?
Thanksgiving Day, we actually went out to the West Valley and hung out with the Hersey clan. And it was a beautiful, beautiful day. Super relaxed and chill. We all, of course, ate a whole bunch and relaxed a whole bunch and were silly and had a good time.
Doesn't sound like us.
I'm usually trustworthy. And then on the day after, we actually went down to Tucson and hung out with a lot of the extended family, cousins and aunts and uncles, and had Nerf battles, which were always exciting. I managed to probably be the only one that got a sweet battle scar out of the out of the battle. Everybody else just was faking it.
Mm-hmm. Dylan was like kind of running the orders there. And my favorite line, you're talking to a bunch of like 4-year-old, 5-year-olds, and it's like, all right, now it's time everybody take 30 seconds and procure ammo in your general vicinity.
I remember sitting down, and all the 4 and 5-year-olds are like, what does that mean?
It's like, get bullets! This week on Sunday, we did our annual hanging of the greens, or as we call it, deck the halls at church.
It was fun.
I forget how many we had, but maybe 20 folks or so stuck around and assembled El Gianto tree in the lobby and got stuff hung around or just wore like stockings on your face and goofed around.
Shout out to Cindy and Rebecca, who worked to put together the special
zip
tree
tie
upstairs.
tree, as we call it.
That's the one that requires a lot of special attention.
It is, but it looks so good once it's put together. So it's like it's hard to justify getting rid of it. It's like just more zip ties. Do we got a superhero this week? If not, we can wait until next week.
I can think of one.
Batman?
This week, our superhero is Batman. Mild-mannered Bruce Wayne, billionaire by day. Fist-pounding,
Masked vigilante by night. Good enough.
good enough. So here's a rich billionaire, and here's Batman. Nailed it.
We got a $5 word of the week.
We got a $5 word this week.
What?
And it's one that at least I've used a fair amount in casual conversation. And I think I've heard you use it a few times.
Wouldn't be surprised.
The word is pontificate.
Which gets its origin from Pontius Pilate when he was...
when he was pontificating all over the place. Pontificate is a verb. It's to express one's opinions in a way that's considered annoyingly pompous or dogmatic.
Sounds like Pontius Pilate.
Pontificating Pilate.
How about something profund?
Ooh, I love profundity.
So for the last 27 years, our church has been in this series called Acts. It hasn't been that long. It's just been since June.
27 weeks, 27 years, it's all good.
Potato, Nelly Furtado. So Allie brought the word this week.
Shout out.
Mic drop. Got lit. She kind of wrapped up the series finally, and it's our transition now into this week we begin Advent. She's talking about hope. Get your hopes up. And her definition of hope was waiting in confident expectation of good things to come.
It's based out of a message from Acts 27, which the context being Paul and the crew, they get caught up in a nor'easter, just this massive storm. They're out at sea for days and weeks, and they have to dump out all their supplies, and eventually it says that everybody was just losing all hope of ever being rescued. And Paul comes in at that point, and he basically, in short version, says, everybody, regain your hope because I trust in what God said. And so the 5 points of basis have to do with how do we regain hope once it's been lost. So the B, the first one, is
believe God. Hebrews 6:18-19 says, so God has given both his promise and his oath. These two things are unchangeable because it is impossible for God to lie. Therefore, we who have fled to him for refuge can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us. This hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. So we can believe God because he is trustworthy.
And that is to be differentiated from believing in God. So you might believe that he exists or that he's got your best in mind. But to actually believe God is to trust his words and to walk faithfully in that. So number 2 is the A, is ask faithfully.
Romans 8:26-28. The message says, meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. He does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs, our aching groans. He knows us far better than we know ourselves. He knows our heavy condition and keeps us present before God. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good.
It's a confidence in God because we can trust him to be faithful because he's already done it. Like that Ebenezer stone, thus far as he brought us. We can trust him in the future.
Yep. And we don't even need to know the right words to ask.
Exactly.
You know, some people don't ask because they don't know how to ask, don't know how to pray, and it says, groans. Sometimes all it takes.
I love Louis Giglio years ago. He said, sometimes the best prayer that we can say is, Daddy, help.
Yeah. Help me, Jesus.
Help. I don't know what else to say or pray. So we've got believe God, we've got ask faithfully, and the third point is S, which is
See with greater perspective. 2 Corinthians 4:17 through 18 says, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal."
And I get a kick out of that comes from Paul, who was shipwrecked and beaten and flogged and stoned and imprisoned and all these horrible things. And he says these are light and momentary afflictions.
Yeah, well, because in the grand scheme of things, when you look at life through an eternal perspective, this is very light and momentary in the grand scheme of things.
Very, very true. So we've got believe God, ask faithfully, see with greater perspective, and number 4, the E.
Expect God to move. Psalm 39:5 says, "And now, Lord, what do I wait for and expect? My hope and expectations are in you."
Enough said about that. That brings us...
Well, and of course, this is teasing into Advent because it's all about expectation and anticipation.
That's a really good point.
So, back to the bases. Believe God. Ask faithfully. See with greater perspective. I feel like we're doing the 12 days of Christmas. 5 golden rings. Expect God to move and
stand firm.
Luke 21:19 says, "Stand firm and you will win life."
I love that it's not even win
awesome.
at life. It's just, you'll win life.
You'll win life. Romans 5:2 through 5 says, "And we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us."
That is a beautiful passage.
So next time you're feeling hopeless, cover your bases. Believe, ask, see, expect, and stand. And again, going back to that definition of hope, waiting in confident expectation of the good things to come. And now as we enter the season of Advent, Advent comes from the Latin word adventus, meaning a coming. And so we look ahead to the second coming of Christ, as well as remember and celebrate the first coming of Christ. But it is definitely a season of expectation, anticipation, hope, joy, and peace. So may you, in this season, as we enter into, be looking expectantly for God to move in your life. May you be filled with great hope.
And joy. And peace. Merry Christmas.
So peace out. So thanks for tuning in this week. Shout out to Allie. I'm going to link her preach down below here.
Like us, comment, interact with us.
Or don't like us. That's fine too.
But still interact with us. That's way more fun.
You're just another light momentary trouble in my life. Just kidding.
Momentary affliction.
And Merry Christmas.